up, everybody? Michael Richards here, Elite Athletic Performance. Thanks for coming back for the next video. So today we're going to go into what I am looking for in the pitching delivery. Been spending a lot of time in the weight room on these videos. I wanted to get to a little bit more baseball specific stuff. This is one of my favorite topics. And because I have no experience whatsoever as a pitcher, only as a catcher, I feel like I bring a pretty unique view of this. The whole reason that I got in this rabbit hole however many years ago is because I started noticing that the things that I was hearing being coached was just plain old not happening. And honestly, that's the type of stuff that just gets in my brain and I can't get rid of it, and that's where I'm at. I still haven't crawled out of that rabbit hole yet to this day. So this is where I'm at. Like I said, this should be some pretty unique information for you, or at least a different way of looking at it. I'm not saying I'm totally right about everything. It's just my way of going about it, and hopefully it will help you out, make sense to you, and be usable information. So as always, who am I? Check out our website if you care. My background is on there, and background in baseball and in strength training, all that stuff, if you care. So before, as always, like and subscribe. Been learning the hard way that Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are owned by Facebook, I guess, and YouTube is owned by Google, and they, in a very petty, annoying way, don't play well together. And so when you share a YouTube link on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, it will get buried in the algorithm to where people that would be interested in this video will never see it, because Facebook doesn't play well with Google. So in order to combat that, I'm asking you to watch these videos, go through our discussion videos, click the link to share them, and text them to a friend or email to a friend that you feel like might enjoy them or find them useful. And that would be a huge help, because we're sharing the videos, and there, we can see on our Facebook page how many people have seen each post. They are usually ranging around 700-800 to 1,000 for each post on Facebook, and when we share a YouTube link, it will usually not get above 100, and that is really annoying. So I would really appreciate it if you would share that, and if you would text it, send it to friends, talk about it, whatever. Obviously, the normal likes and subscribes are just so precious, so I really appreciate it if you would do that, help us out with that. So, all right, so let's get on the same page about a few things.
I'll tell you all about another quick way to support our page, our channel, and keep this free content coming out. You can go over to our Patreon page and sign up to do a $5 a month membership, or a 10 or 25, and actually I think there's a 50, never mind. So we're working on ways to thank you for these, but we have people that just want to support, and it is greatly appreciated. That would keep this content coming out and move it out a lot faster, so we could hire some of the production costs to be done. These videos take about 20 hours of dedicated work to get done, so any help you can get that would speed that process up, we would really appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys watching. We'll get back to it. Hey, what's up, guys? Just wanted to tell you about a new way to support our channel and to get great products out there. We've got an affiliate link going with Mark Pro now. You guys know that we use these a lot in gym. Big believer in them. The way that they decrease soreness and help with muscle soreness, things like that. These are actually like, what we used to think about with the flush runs and stuff like that. These are actually doing something similar to that. They're a really good product. If you use our affiliate link or our code, actually, whenever at checkout, you can use EAP LLC, and you will get 10% off of your purchase. So I appreciate you guys using that. We'll get back to the video.
This is the first one, and honestly, if there's one thing that you take away from this video, it probably needs to be this. I am just as guilty of coaching this in the past as anybody. So, like I said, this is not a slam piece or anything like that. This is just something that I've learned, and honestly, it's one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is telling a pitcher to drive or explode or push down the mound or any of those type of verbs or whatever, however you want, whatever, to down the mound with the back leg is the single most detrimental coaching cue that there is. And I know that's going to rock some worlds. It rocked mine when I heard it the first time, but it makes total sense. And I'll show you in a video what I'm talking about here in a little bit. But basically, you need the pitcher to ride his back leg down the mound, like while his front leg and the front of his lower half is moving down the mound. He needs to be hanging out on that back leg as long as possible. If you tell him to drive or push or explode, and I should say with his entire foot in contact with the ground, but with the mound, while he is moving his front foot, lead foot down the mound, if you tell him to push, drive, or explode, what's the first thing that's going to happen? You can't push, drive, or explode off of your heel. You do it on your toe. As soon as they go onto their toe, all their hip shoulder separation, their timing, everything is lost. So you got to be really careful with that. With that coaching cue, there are just better ways to go about it. It's frustrating. That's why this thing is so hard and so interesting, because the stuff that the stuff that looks like is happening, it's just not happening. So that's why I use a lot of high-speed video with our pitchers. So a few more things. Pitching is the fastest movement in sports. That's documented. So just keep in mind that this is really complicated. And when you tell a kid or an athlete to do something and they don't do it, they're not being defiant. It's just hard. And they may really not understand what you're trying to tell them to do. There's just so many breakdowns in communication when you're talking about verbal communication to an athlete with something this complicated. It's just really hard. So it's why we use a lot more of what we call field drills or muscle memory work, things like that. It's why I believe that the best way to impact a pitcher's delivery is to show him what he's doing wrong, give him drills to fix it, and leave him alone so he can zone out on doing it. There are some guys that can do that. There are some guys that don't. It's not productive for everybody. It's, you know, kind of one of those things. If you're not, you know, we can't make everything perfect for everybody. That would not be an interesting world if we could do that. So anyways, there are however many zeros there are there. I just held down the 0 button for a while, but there are that many cues for like 5 desired outcomes in the pitching delivery. Like, so there, you know, when you see or hear somebody giving a particular clue to a pitcher, they're trying to get to the same place you are. And, you know, so like there's no need. Some people just listen for coaches coaching their pitchers just to tell them what they're doing wrong or how stupid those cues were. So don't be that guy. Be careful with that. Everyone sees and describes things differently. So, you know, like I said, I've always joked that, like, when you hear a coach yelling, "Stay back," you know, is he talking about the pitcher's back leg? Is he talking about not flying open? Is he talking about bunt coverage? Is he talking, like, there's so many breakdowns in verbal communication. You just got to be careful with that. So the people that are the most certain are usually the ones that don't know much. So you'll hear me a lot being like, well, I think that's what's happening, but, you know, I'm not super 100% dead set, which sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I just told you something that was, quote, wrong. And that is, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, it's literally happening when you see it in slow motion. So that's kind of an exception to that. Just, you know who I'm talking about. The people that are certain they know more than everybody else, I would stay away from them. So, and check your ego at the door. You know, we're all trying to get even the bad guys think they're the good guys. You know, people are all just trying to help people get better. And sometimes it's a little bit more ego driven, but you know what I'm saying. We're all trying to help pitchers throw better. So with that being said, moving forward, and this is probably the biggest epiphany that I've had regarding the pitching delivery and things that are going on with it is that, trying to get a delivery sent to me while I'm doing my video. It's gonna have to wait. But so most of the things that coaches see and try to correct are the symptoms of something that has already happened in the delivery. Once you see this, it will open up a whole lot more understanding of how the delivery happens. And like I said, I'm as guilty of this as anything. The first one that comes to mind for me is arm path. I really believe that there's not a lot of things that we need to be, quote, coaching about arm path. A lot of times, most of the time, with the right timing in the lower half, the arm path will clean up to where we want it. Now, there are some guys that do good with some connect ball work. You know, if they're the ones that are flying way out here and their timing is off really bad, there is a time and a place for that, but I do believe a lot of simple arm path problems can be fixed just by helping, I don't really like this terminology, but the hinge. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But when that gets right, a lot of things start syncing up and then the next thing you know, the arm path looks great, and you really haven't even told them anything about their arm path. You just fixed their lower half. So, all right, so before we get into this, and I'm serious about this, like the terms that I use are purposely, they sound kind of dumb. And the reason for that is this book right here. If you are a coach and you haven't read this book, I highly, highly recommend it. Especially if you're a coach that you're like, I swear they never listen to me. You never said that before, right? So you need to check that book out, because this book tells you how to make people remember what you say and to pay attention to it. It's how you get the brain to wake up and pay attention to information. People they're not always purposely trying to ignore you. It's just that you're using the same verbiage that they've already heard, and the brain will just shut off. And so I have things that sound a little weird. I use things that they're like, what, like, what is he talking about? Make fun of it if you want. It's pretty productive. So with having said that, we'll dive into the 3 things that I'm looking for and that I show pitchers when I am breaking down their film and we're looking at it. These are the things that I'm talking to them about. The first one is the Kneecap Laser. So what am I looking at? We're going to use, honestly, before we get into it, we're going to use the same video for the next 3 cues. Not necessarily because I'm trying to blow a bunch of smoke up this kid's butt or anything. His lower half mechanics are beautiful, but I just happened to capture it at the perfect angle to do these type of explanation videos with this. So it's as much, it's a lot to do with the mechanics, but it's also part of just, I got lucky with the camera angle and the lighting and all that stuff when I caught this. So
okay guys, I tried to do this breakdown with the camera just facing the screen, but it's just not working. So all right, so Kneecap Laser, what I'm talking about is this back knee right here, and I like this cue because it paints a very unique picture in the pitcher's head. What I'm telling them is we will look at a video of theirs, and I'll tell them to envision a laser coming out of this knee right here, and I'm like, okay, where is that laser shooting? And kind of give them an idea of what theirs is doing, and where's it shooting, when does it turn in, when does it, because most pitchers are going to get to like right here, and this back knee is going to start caving in, and that is a very crucial element to hip shoulder separation. The minute this knee caves in, you basically, when it comes away from that little stationary position, you've basically initiated hip shoulder separation. And if that happens early in the process, all of the timing is completely thrown off. So holding that and riding that back foot, like I mentioned earlier in the video, is crucial. And holding all of their foot in contact with the ground right there, like I mentioned earlier, that is why the cue of pushing or driving with your back foot is a no-no. And because what will happen is this right here will not happen, right? They can't push with that foot with this vertical shin like that. That has got to stay like that, honestly, as long as possible. That's where people get kind of mixed up with saying, get down the mound farther and all that, because it is kind of a symptom of productivity when you get down the mound farther, but getting down the mound farther on purpose is not going to create that. That's why this stuff is so confusing. So anyways, we'll look at that Kneecap Laser together, and then I will usually honestly go over to this video or any other good ones that I have of some of our pro guys, and I'll say, okay, now look at their Kneecap Laser. And it really, like I said, paints a really good picture in their head of what we're trying to accomplish with that back leg. Okay, the eyeball. So what we are doing here, and I will use basically the same process, what I'm talking about is an eyeball on the inside of the lead leg, so the left leg if it's a right-handed pitcher, and vice versa. And what I'll do, I will draw literally with a Sharpie marker an eye, a circle right there on the inside of that leg right there. The part of the thigh or the inner knee that would touch if you were to tell them to put their knees together. That's where I want it. And I'll draw a circle right there. And sometimes I'll even draw one on mine, and so they can kind of see it, because This is all about getting their brains to switch on and pay attention to what you're saying, you know, because this stuff is so complicated. And so I'll draw that circle right there. Excuse me. And I'll be like, all right, so that's an eyeball now. All right, imagine that eyeball, and then we'll look at their video, and I'll be like, all right, so what is your eyeball looking at? And I wish I was a little bit more savage, because I would love to show you some video of some guys that were not doing it well. I'm just really not comfortable with that. I don't like showing videos of people that are not doing it well. It just feels weird to me. So I've got a couple videos of some hip shoulder separation that we've gotten cleaned up, but I feel like I just don't like that. But I know I'm being a little bit of a wimp. But anyways, we'll show that video, we'll watch their video, and they're like, okay, yeah, my eyeball's in. And then I'll show them this, and I'm like, look, this is a perfect example, so you're probably not going to get to it, but do you see what I'm saying? His eyeball on the inside of his thigh, what is it looking at? You know, I'll ask them that question. What's it looking at, and when does it stop looking at what it's looking at? And, you know, we're right here, and I'm like, I feel like, you know, if they're not really talking, I'll kind of push the conversation, and I'll be like, I feel like his eyeball is staring at the dirt of the mound, the dirt of the mound, the dirt of the mound, and about right here, it's going to flip, and it's going to get a look at third base or shortstop, however you want to look at that. And you can kind of see the wheels turning. Usually, you know, if we were to go back, and you can imagine, and if you've worked with pitchers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of them will come straight out of leg lift, and I mean, it's like right here, and their knee is already flipping over, and that eyeball, if it ever looks at the dirt of the mound, it doesn't for long, and it's already way flipped over and pointing, looking at shortstop or third base. They're honestly, and I'm going to touch on this in the next one, but it's really a question of, do they spend any time out of leg lift in which they are not preparing to land on the ground, to land their lead leg on the ground? That seems to be something very crucial to me. So I have running out of space. So I have taken note of that, and that is something that I have really been paying attention to. I really feel like that is something. There's something to that, you know. I don't feel like we ever completely learn about this, and we're done learning. So that's something that I feel like it, but it's something that's really hard to get guys to understand, and even harder to get them to actually make happen. So the line. Okay, so the last one that I'm looking at is the line. I'm sure you'll notice that all of these go back to the same thing, and they're very similar. It's basically, I'm finding ways to kind of figure out and see what works for each particular person. You know, there's some things, it's interesting to me how some people understand certain things in a certain way. You know, because I mean, if you look at this really isn't that different from the eyeball, but it's just the other side of the body, and it's a different way to look at it. And there are certain things that click with certain people. So what I'm talking about is the line, this right here. The main questions I'm looking at is, what's the angle of the line, and how long do you maintain the line? So if you know, and a lot of guys, even older guys that throw at a pretty high level, they really don't maintain a line, you know, and their line is a little too vertical, you know. So what is that, a forward slash, I guess? Yeah, not a backslash, it'd be a forward slash. So you know, that's something to really look at. And you know, it sometimes clicks with them when I'm like, look, you know, look at the bottom of his foot, look at what it's pointing at, you know. Look at the distance between his kneecaps before this kneecap flips, you know, towards the plate. That's crucial. That's something to look at. All of these things are just little bitty things, you know. All of these will basically end up getting the same result, but when you're talking about complex movement patterns, you've got to find something that will click with the person that you need to do the movement pattern, and then get them to understand it. And so it's kind of like a fly trying to escape a window. I'm just like pecking at different angles, trying to see which one works for the particular person. So so that's the line. That's what I'm looking at with that. And like I said, I mean, these are non-traditional, and that's the point. So hopefully those are helpful. And all right, we'll get moving to the next one.
Into it, really. So what is the one thing that we're trying to get to with all of these drills? All right, and I'm gonna pull the camera back. Actually, I'm not, because we got a couple more videos to do. So all of these are ways to look for and help create the most important element in the pitching delivery, and that is proper torso position at stride foot contact. All right, and that is AKA hip shoulder separation. Everybody knows what that is, or everybody at least has heard that. They might not necessarily know exactly what it is. So hip shoulder separation is kind of a tricky thing. Everybody has heard of it and they understand the general concept, but we're going to dive into it just a little bit more. So the elements of hip shoulder separation are distance, and that would be, like, honestly the best, really we could just go back to that video we were at. And so if you imagine, and again, I like lasers because they paint a really good picture. If you had a laser shooting out of his belt buckle, if he had a uniform on, and you had a laser shooting out of each nipple, okay, right now they are oriented at the same place. And for reference, let's say 0 degrees is home plate, okay? So right now they are, 90 degree, they're more than 90 degrees, probably 110, 100 degree, whatever, away from the plate, all right? And both of those, all three of those, hopefully all three, all three of those lasers are pointing at 100 degrees away from the plate or whatever. Now that belt buckle laser is going to start orienting towards the plate, and I mean, obviously I don't think it's ever going to make it to 0, but I'm going to use 0 just for easy math. All right, so his belt buckle is going to orient to 0-ish, you know, at this point. It's going that way right now. The nipple lasers are still pointing basically in the same direction that they were earlier, right? They're still pointing, and they're in that 100 degree range right there. So the distance, or the degrees between the belt buckle laser and the nipple lasers, is your distance in your hip shoulder separation, and that is. Now the second one is speed. So the speed of your hip shoulder separation is, if you were to measure, and there is technology that does this, measure the speed at which your, quote, nipple lasers catch back up with your belt buckle laser. All right, and I've got a video here. This is Blaine Knight, pitched at Arkansas. Actually a friend of mine. He's a really good dude. He has, you can see right there, you can watch it, he has tremendous torso speed. So watch his torso catch up with his lower half. You can see that, like, head jerk, like there. That was a really good one right there. That is your speed of your hip shoulder separation right there. Very tremendous high torso speed, or hip shoulder separation speed, or however you want to look at that. So let's get one more right there. You can see that. And his slider, ooh, it's been dirty for a long time. So that is your hip shoulder separation speed. All right, now we're getting to the king of all of them, the timing. All right, this one is a little bit harder to understand, a little bit harder to explain, but when you see it, you see it. It's kind of another one of those things. The timing of the hip shoulder separation is the king daddy of them all right? So it's not the speed and it's not the distance. And what I mean by timing is, or sync, or link, however you want to look at the when one fires and when the next fires. So, and really it goes all the way back to when is the beginning of hip shoulder separation, when is it going to be created, and when is it going to unwind, basically. That's all playing into this. The guys that you see when you're like, wow, he is throwing hard and it looks like he's just playing catch, those are the guys that have tremendous timing. This is another guy from the University of Arkansas. This is in here 2 years ago. Actually, this was right when the COVID shutdown happened. You might not believe me when I tell you, but that throw right there is 92 miles an hour. And it just looks like he is, I mean, we were practically talking about the weather, and he was blowing up good college hitters. And I mean, not even locked in, not even, I mean, just, yeah. But the timing, and that's not a slow motion video, obviously, his timing is phenomenal. And so the best way I know to describe it is, I know you've seen those big lanky kids that have they just look off, and you can't really pinpoint what it is. A lot of times their timing is thrown off because they have a pretty early glove break, and basically at the top of their leg lift, the ball comes out of their glove, and they start the counter rotation of their delivery, the counter rotation of their torso, I'm sorry, and I'm going to go back to that video that we've used a million times already. All right, so counter rotation of the torso is when the torso, the upper body, the nipples start, counter rotation is, see how his back shoulder right here is more than 180 degrees away from the plate. If the plate is 0, it's pointing at well beyond 180 degrees. That is counter rotation of the torso. And any bit of, when that right shoulder, his back shoulder, begins coming towards the plate and more orienting to a lower number of degrees, that is getting out of counter rotation, okay? That counter rotation is basically, if you see the plate as 0 and he's standing, a right-handed pitcher is standing in the stretch position waiting to throw, then his right shoulder is pointing at 180 degrees. It's pointing at second base. That's 180 degrees from home plate if home plate is 0, okay? So the best timed, or I guess, let me get back to where I was, with the kids that look off, they basically are breaking their glove early, which he breaks his glove earlier, but he has a really good timing mechanism that allows this to happen. The guys that don't look right, and they will break their glove early, and the counter rotation of their torso happens really early, but they haven't begun the unwinding or the rotation of their pelvis yet, and so they have to hold that counter rotation for a really long time. And there are some guys that just struggle with that. It's a really hard thing to do. When in this particular video, the reason his timing is still okay, it's more than okay, is because he is actually counter rotating his torso. He's not even counter rotating it, he is just letting it drift backwards as this foot leaves. So this foot is just leaving his upper body behind, and then once it kind of bottoms out the counter rotation, then the elasticity in his body whips his upper body back through. And it always reminds me of the Roadrunner cartoons, and when he would take off running and his head would be sitting there and his body had taken off, and then the head just whips and catches up. That's kind of what I think about. And for the record, in this video, his arm path is his elbow is a little low and off time. But I just think he was kind of feeling it this night and got a little bit too deep in his lower half, but it actually created a really good video. But that's another video for another day. Don't pay attention to the arm while we're talking about this stuff. So like I said, his counter rotation of his torso is almost being created by his lead foot leaving his upper body behind, if that makes sense. See, it's just kind of hanging out waiting on its time to go, while the front of his lower half is doing its job. All right, the guys that get off time, they break their glove, and then it's just awkward. They're trying to figure, it's like their arm, if their arm could talk, it's like, what do I do now? Why am I back here? And they don't really bottom out their counter rotation of their torso or anything. They basically start throwing. They start the throwing motion with their torso and their arm before they have finished the process with their lower body. Hopefully that makes sense. This is, like I said, a super complicated thing. Okay, so that is the main things that we are going over that we look for in the pitching delivery when we're working with a pitcher. Hopefully that made sense. It's a lot of information. It's really thick stuff. It's really dense discussion, and there's so many things going on with that counter rotation and all that stuff. So you can get to, you can get really cross-eyed trying to think of it, trying to work through it and all that when you're talking about it in your discussions. So like I said, if you want to discuss it more, I'm happy to do so. Let me know, in the comments. We can have a discussion, however you want to go about that. But like I said, if you think I'm an idiot, just move on. You definitely won't be the first person to do that. So Side points considerations, the arm path. I mentioned this earlier, I'll touch on it one more time. I really just, you'll probably notice in those three things, I never really got to anything with arm path. I believe that the arm path, for the most part, is a symptom of what is set in motion, good or bad, with the lower half. There are times that we will go after a few things with the arm path, but it's after we've exhausted everything with the lower half. So that's that. You know, we definitely won't go in on the arm path, right? And I feel like it's a mistake to focus on the arm path because, like I said, it's like banging your head against the wall all day and then taking ibuprofen at night so you can not have a headache and you can go to sleep. You need to stop banging your head against the wall, and that way you won't need the ibuprofen so you can sleep. Kind of the same thing. Focus on what's causing it, not the symptom. And then, that, like I said earlier, I really feel like there are things that you need to know as a coach, and in order to create a way to help athletes with complicated subjects like this. And then there are things that you actually need to coach, and I feel like they are not always the same, especially with complicated stuff like this. So really and truly, obviously the eyeball and the line and the kneecap laser, those work really well for me because I have a camera that I paid a lot of money for that slows things down to 1,000 frames per second. I don't know that you would be able to do that without that camera and be able to sit there and watch that video with them. So, you know, I definitely don't know that that's necessarily how you would want to coach it with your athletes. It's really just like a method for you to know how to kind of create your own way. This is basically just a system or a starting point for me to help athletes. You know, like I feel like with a complicated subject like this, if you don't have a starting place or a few things of low-hanging fruit to look at going into it, it's going to be a mess when you start trying to explain it to them, you know. And you don't want to paint everybody in, push everybody into the same buckets, but you do have to simplify things or it just turns into paralysis by analysis. So that's basically my best effort at that. And in 5 years, I'll probably watch this video and be like, man, I was an idiot, and you know, this was a terrible idea, and you know, I'll have all these new cool things that I'm using, and you know, I really am. I never want to be doing the same things like 2 years later. I kind of want to be embarrassed by what I'm doing now, you know, compared to what I did 2 years ago. I've always felt like if I'm still doing the same thing 2 years later, that's not a good thing. So anyway, so hopefully that helps. As always, we got to get those subscribers up. We were at 273 when I took this screenshot. I think we're at 285. We really need to get to 300 before the middle of March, if at all possible. So share this video, send it out send it in a text to a friend or a coach buddy or something like that. We have a Facebook group of coaches that I've put together. There's about 5 or 6 guys in there right now. I'd love to have you in there. If you are interested in that, comment below, let me know, and I'll figure out how to find you, or you can find me on Facebook and I'll put you in that group. Let me know what you think, and I hope the video helped. We'll see you in the next one.